This is the part of the American Southland known as Middle Tennessee. It was settled almost 200 years ago. Tough pioneer families hiked over from the Carolinas and Georgia mostly, settled and stayed in these little valleys, generation after generation of them. They farmed here, fished here, fiddled, and fought here when necessary. Raised corn, cattle, and kids. And longer than most anyone can remember, they made uncommonly smooth Tennessee whiskey. This is Lynchburg, Tennessee. Population 361. Chances are you've heard of the place. A lot of people have. Well, they better have, because that's my job. Letting people know about Lynchburg and the people who live and work here. Me? I'm Ted Simmons. I write ads for Jack Daniel's Distillery. Yeah, for almost 25 years now, I've been working with this fella here. He's Art Hancock. Ever since 1954, he's been guiding and supervising the marketing and advertising of the Jack Daniel's brand. Folks say there's no more popular brand in all of America than Jack Daniel's. So I figured that before he retires, we ought to get Art to tell us all about it, so we won't forget how we got here. It's a pretty special place, Lynchburg, Tennessee, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's a special place not only for people like myself and you that have worked directly and indirectly for the company, but I think for a lot of consumers too.
And the interesting thing about Lynchburg is that all of the marketing for the brand really begins right here, with the distillery being here, the Squire letters emanating from Lynchburg, and the whole attitude of the brand is the attitude of this little town.
Absolutely.
While they're in town, everyone likes to have a home-cooked Southern meal at Miss Mary Bobo's boarding house. Miss Mary is passed on now, but the tradition is kept up by Lynn Tolley, the great-grand-niece of Jack Daniel.
We'll be here early.
Right, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
What do you think it is about small towns that seems to strike a chord with people, that seems to connect with them?
You know, I'm not altogether sure that just about anybody that's living around this country, I guess around the world, in a way they long to have lived in a small town with what they conjecture that it means. And I think what we've done in our advertising, what we've done in a lot of our unorthodox kinds of promotions, is to make people feel that there is indeed that little town that they've longed for, and it's sitting down in Moore County, you know, here in Middle Tennessee.
People are just a little friendlier, and perhaps those of us who live in larger metropolitan areas just wish our own lives were a little bit more like this here in this little town of Lynchburg, Tennessee. After setting up our lunch plans at Miss Mary's, Art and I walked over to the distillery and stopped at the original office Mr. Jack himself used over 100 years ago. Has anything changed in here?
In here, Ted? No, not much change. We're sitting here right where Mr. Jack sat, Mr. Lem Motlow sat, Mr. Lem's son sat. This is the old office. In fact, they were in here up until 1951. Then they moved over to the new office.
What was the reason that they settled here in Lynchburg, Tennessee, on this particular spot?
Well, Mr. Jack, I think he knew that he needed excellent water, good limestone water. Mr. Jack found a cave spring right outside the door here. Charcoal mellowing, the hard maple charcoal mellowings right up the hill, right in back of us here. He had everything he needed to make the kind of product that he made. And he had this feeling that, by gosh, every day he made it, he was going to make it the best he could. And we still really honor that all the way through the years.
So Jack Daniel made a good product, and I'll bet he was a good salesman too.
You know, he must have been a good salesman. You know, he thought enough back, way back, that he knew he had a good whiskey, and he hauled it over to the St. Louis World's Fair back in 1904 and won the gold medal. His nephew Lem, who came later, was just as good a salesman. One of the great slogans, I think, of the Jack Daniel's brand is "all goods worth price charged." Really says something and means something.
So Jack Daniel and Lem Motlow were great salesmen. They had a great product, but I bet they had some problems too.
Oh man, yeah. They did have some problems. You know, they had Tennessee Dry even before Prohibition. Then they sat around and waited for Prohibition to see a repeal. Then World War II came along. By that time, Jack was, of course, gone. Lem was still around. The Motlow boys were the ones that really got it started. Back in about 1951, there was an article appeared in Fortune magazine. Wonderful article. It talked about this little distillery called Jack Daniel's back in the hills of Tennessee, where they make just a little bit of Jack Daniel's, not very much. If you can find a bottle, grab it. And the product had a couple of areas of, we call them fanatics, that really knew about this product. One was in Washington. Sam Rayburn, the old Speaker of the House, he and his group, they each afternoon struck a blow for liberty with Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. Then on the West Coast, they had the Rat Pack. Humphrey Bogart, and Sinatra, and David Niven. And they were drinking Jack Daniel's. That was a part of being a part of the Rat Pack. So with those two areas working for us, and an article in Fortune magazine, we all of a sudden began to find ourselves short of whiskey. And at that point, I believe it began to go.
So the fact that it was hard to get played a big part in the success of Jack Daniel's.
Sure did. Sure did, Ted. Something's hard to get, I guess everybody wants it. They didn't have enough whiskey. So they had to make some more, but they had to wait a while before the product became mature. Yeah, we were selling 160,000 cases back in that year. 160,000. Today we're well over 3 million cases.
3 million cases of Jack Daniel's whiskey.
Good ride, Ted. Really a good ride.
Well, let's go over to the barrel house. Take a look at some of it.
Sounds like a good idea.
How many people come down here to take a tour of Jack Daniel's distillery?
Good gosh, I think well over 200,000. 200,000 people a year. Ted, how about some lemonade?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Jack Daniel, yellow label.
Yellow label. People must be very surprised when they find out that there's no way to get a drink of Jack Daniel's in Jack Daniel's country.
Yeah, you and I and all of them are sitting right in the midst of a dry county. Have been since 1907.
Now, you were saying that you were at 160,000 cases in 1954.
You know, that's just about the time we really started putting together the overall strategy and the advertising. Yes, we hired the advertising agency, and they came up with what I believe, and I think it's shared by many in the advertising industry, as a revolutionary campaign at the time. This was a campaign made up of relatively small ads, 2/3 page, black and white, long copy, little bottle, lower right-hand corner of the ad. Everybody said that nobody would read the ads. But you know, it's amazing. We found out over the years that they not only read the ads, but they became very, very intrigued with them and looking forward to the next one, just as you and I look forward to a postcard now and then from home.
Of course, a good example of how people read these ads is the Mary Bobo ad.
I remember it well.
And we had this idea of having a birthday, announcing Mary Bobo's birthday when she turned 100 years old, and just told people in the ad that she was having a birthday and we were all going to be sending her a card, and that if the readers, would like to send her a card, why, they could go right ahead and do it.
I remember all the long copy, and we expected at best we'd get maybe 40, 50 cards. Mm-hmm. Do you remember?
Yeah.
42,343 cards and letters wishing her birthday. 36 birthday cakes, I remember that well. You know, the great thing about that Mrs. Bobo ad was just like every other ad we've ever run. They were real people. Mm-hmm. Real people and real events. No phoniness, nothing like that in the advertising.
Now that's a big part of this advertising, I think, is the fact that the people who are pictured are real, the situations that are pictured are real, and that if someone drove down into this neck of the woods here in Tennessee, they'd drive right into Jack Daniel's country, and it would be just the way it is in those ads.
Exactly. Ted, you've been writing our ads for, I guess, 20, 25 years, haven't you?
That's right.
How many hundreds of ads do you think we've written over the years?
Oh, we've done hundreds. We've done a lot of ads. And I think there's a good reason for it, because there are so many stories to be told about Jack Daniel's Hollow, and so many people here to write about. And people say, well, don't you get tired of writing about Jack Daniel's Hollow? And of course the answer is you don't, because there's so much here to tell people about. And the more information that you can put out to potential drinkers about Jack Daniel's, the more apt you are, I believe, to win them as a friend. So if a Jack Daniel's drinker sees an ad in a magazine, chances are he's never seen that same ad before. And he's getting a message from the distillery about his favorite whiskey. We like that idea of talking to him, telling him something new every time that he sees an ad. No one ad is any more important than any other ad. There are no blockbuster ads. They're all different, and yet they're all the same. And the more ads, the more stories from Jack Daniel's that our drinker sees, the closer he feels to the distillery. And the more we feel that we can keep him as a good friend, or gain a good friend if he's not already a friend of ours.
I think it's a campaign that has an honesty about it. It talks about America the way maybe it was in the years gone by, but it talks about work ethic, it talks about a product that is excellent, that has a unique taste, but it never tries to sell. It's always telling about this little distillery making this product down through the years.
Now just tell me about the Tennessee Squire organization and the part that's played in the growth of Jack Daniel's.
Well, that of course goes back to when we were short of whiskey. And we had a lot of people like Mr. Sinatra and others that couldn't find Jack Daniel's, and we wanted them to keep remembering us. And we formed this little group, and we called them Tennessee Squires. We gave them a little plot of ground down in the distillery.
So every Tennessee Squire owns a piece of property right here in Lynchburg.
That's right.
Well, that's it in this country, but how have you gotten established overseas?
Our management decided back in the early days of 1954-55 that we would supply always the American embassies, wherever they are, wherever they were, all over the world.
And how have you been advertising over there? When did that begin?
That began in the 70s and 80s and is now today pretty extensive throughout the world.
So this whiskey from the hills of Tennessee is going all over the world.
102 countries around the world.
All right, if we're going to get any fried chicken, I think we better get down to Mary Bobo's right now.
I think I'll take the fried okra.
Okay.
Did I ever tell you about the time Joe Clark got me herding ducks in Mulberry Creek?
Herding ducks?
Herding ducks, yeah. We needed a picture of some ducks for one of your ads, and he got me in the middle of that Mulberry Creek herding.